I had Logan Paul on my podcast.
Would Logan do it with me?
Logan would kick your ass, I think. You're riding a fantastic wave. How could you not make some mistakes along the way?
How can you be for small government and then have the government dictate all these things in your personal life, right? You idiots. You got it completely wrong.
Can't you just wake up and stop? I was walking down the hallway like a darted bull with a needle sticking out of my ass.
Tell me the 5 steps to the getting to the point where someone like you would say, I want this guy in my life. I want to help this guy.
Hey, Jordan Belfort here, the Wolf of Wall Street, and I'm back once again in the new Wolf's Den. And as always, I start off each episode with a 20 to 30-minute monologue where I discuss one particular topic, and then afterwards I bring on a guest who will essentially crystallize what I just spoke about. That's the story. So we start off today with an awesome topic, and the topic is money. You know, money is something that is so misunderstood by so many people around the world of all ages, and I started seeing this in my own family growing up. Listen, I did not grow up having a lot of money. For those of you who didn't figure that out from watching the movie, my parents were not poor, but they certainly were not wealthy, and they were probably, I would say, not like a lower middle class. Let me put it this way. We had just enough to know how little we had. Meaning I had all the basic essentials. My parents gave me a great education, gave me a lot of love, too, a lot of unconditional love and support. But we always knew that there was this other place. It was called Long Island. I was from New York City. Long Island was where you went after you got rich, after you made it. You'd move out to Long Island, and you'd buy a nice big home, and that's where the rich people were. We were in the city, grew up in an apartment building with 6 stories. And interestingly enough, though, in my early years, I would say between maybe up to 10 years old, I never really understood why someone would even want to live in a house. I was like, this is crazy. I mean, God, all my friends were in the building. My building was filled with kids, right? We used to run up and down the halls, up down the stairwells, right? Why would I have to leave my house and go to someone else's house? Like the whole thought of like play dates and shit like that, it was foreign to me. Never got that. Of course, when I got a bit older and I realized how awesome it is to own a home if you don't live in an awesome apartment. You know, I was in like sort of a low rent district apartment, right? Because there are some apartments that are gorgeous, like the one I'm in now is amazing, right? But for the most part, you know, a beautiful big home with a swimming pool and yard and a property. I mean, it's the best way to go, right? That's what rich people do. They have homes, and those homes have gates typically to keep out the unwanted people. But when you're young, you don't realize that. When I first realized that we were poor, so to speak, it's when I was about 11 years old, just turning 12. I wanted to get a dirt bike for my birthday. And at the time, a dirt bike only was $130. That was it, right? And I went to my mom, my dad said, hey, you know, I want to buy a dirt bike. And they're like, you know, I'm sorry, we can't afford it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't afford it? I mean, it's $130 back. It's maybe the equivalent of $1,000 right now. That's about the equivalent, right? I'm like, I don't understand. You guys are both professionals. You're both CPAs. They were accountants, my parents. Both certified public accountants. Both have been to college. Both were brilliant. Both were hardworking. And I didn't get it. I said, how could they not have money to buy me this dirt bike? I know it sounds selfish and self-centered, but I was 10 years old and nothing's changed. No, but seriously, I was 10 years old and it didn't add up to me. So my mother, she sits me down and she says, why? She takes out a pen and paper and she starts showing me how much money they made, what their expenses were, what they would put aside for like an emergency, how they were saving a little bit of money for my college education. And when they were done, they said, you see, we have nothing left. They were basically living paycheck to paycheck. And I was fucking appalled. I literally was like, I almost was like angry at them. It's like, how could you guys be this smart? Just my parents were brilliant. Seriously, my mom is still alive. One of the most brilliant people I know. Brilliant, hardworking, extremely educated. All 3 of those things. And broke. And my dad too. So what happened is I linked up in my mind at this age. I'm like, wait a second. There's something missing. See, you could be really, really brilliant. You could be really well educated. You could work really, really hard and have no money. or just be getting by. So I said there's something missing from this equation. And here's what happens when it comes to money and beliefs about money. Typically, either you'll adopt the same exact beliefs as your parents had, or you'll go the exact opposite way. Meaning, if your parents believe, if your family taught you that money was scarce, it was hard to earn, it was in short supply, then guess what? You're going to pretty much have a good shot of going through life thinking that money is scarce, it's in short supply, it's hard to earn. You have to trade time for money. That like money's something that rich people have. It's not for you. I grew up with all these things that my parents tried to insert in me, meaning they tried to insert it in my own psychology as facts of life. Like work really hard, get a great job, go to school, get a degree, become a doctor. And then you can make a lot of money because the only noble way to become wealthy, my mother said to me, is you got to be a doctor. You got to be a doctor. It's like fucking hypnosis. I mean, I was in the high chair at 2 years old. She's spoon-feeding me applesauce. And she's like, you got to be a doctor. You got to be a doctor. That's who's wealthy. Now, here's the irony. So at the age of 11, I had this epiphany, like, really for the first time, Jesus, my parents don't really make a lot of money. And I started just thinking things through. What's missing here? So I kind of got it when I was 11 years old. I said, you know what? There's two fundamental things that are just absolutely and positively missing from the way my parents go about living their life in terms of how they make decisions and how they view money. And number one is they were risk averse. My parents did not believe in taking any risk. They tried to win by playing defense. And that is impossible, my friend. You never win by playing defense. You win by playing offense. You have to take risk in life. You have to put yourself out there. You have to invest. You have to go for it. You can't live your life playing scared. You can't live your life trying not to lose and expect to win. It was like 5 years ago that I watched this happen in the World Cup. There were these two teams playing, and one was playing, I think it was Brazil versus Germany. I don't know if you're a Brazilian, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but it was two teams playing, and one was playing defense, and the other was playing offense, and you watch the people playing offense just eventually just wear down and slaughter the team who was trying to win by not making a mistake. You cannot win in life by not making mistakes. A, you're going to make mistakes no matter what, but B, it's not like no mistakes equal success. No mistakes equal poverty or at most mediocrity and averagism and a disempowered life. You win by playing offense. If you look at any rich person, any person that's succeeding, they're out there taking chances. They're out there taking risks, educated, well-calculated risks, but they're out there risking things. You don't win by playing defense. And I watched my parents so much so live by that mantra, they never even bought a home. We rented an apartment, and to this very day, my dad passed away, my parents never bought a home. Even when I was back in the day making, God knows how much money in my 20s, of course I said to my parents, let me buy you a house. No. We like where we are. So our friends are here. We're close to all the things we know. No. And they never, what do we do? We didn't want to have that upkeep. We don't have that overhead or whatever. I mean, they never bought a home. They never did anything that would possibly result in them putting themselves out there, playing the game, a bit of a roll of the dice. They played it safe. So they lived a life up to the point when I got rich of mediocrity and average when it comes to money. I'm not saying their life was, they had a wonderful marriage and they're wonderful people, but I'm just talking in terms of money. They never had any. They lived paycheck to paycheck. And then, of course, what did I say? I say when you're trying not to lose by playing defense, inevitably what happens? You still make mistakes. Or life happens to you. We live in a world where shit happens. You're walking along the street, you're doing everything right, and bam, you get hit between the eyes with a lump of shit. So they have bumper stickers that say shit happens. Shit happens. And when that shit happens, that's typically the moment in time when we start telling ourselves a story. That's that narrative, the story that we tell ourselves, which is typically a bullshit story we concoct about why we can't have what we want, why we can't get the life, get the things we want. And ultimately, it's that story that we tell ourselves that stops us from getting what we want in life. It's the story that you tell yourself about why you can't get what you want, that bullshit story. That is what stops you from getting what you want. Why? Because the story stops you from getting honest with yourself. You see, rather than saying, maybe I'm not living the life I want, maybe I'm not rich, maybe I'm just barely getting by because I'm lacking X, Y, Z, because of these things. No, instead of doing that, that's introspection and getting honest, and honesty is the basis for all change. But instead of doing that, you say, maybe money's just evil. Maybe I'm not meant to have it. Maybe maybe I'm just too old now. Maybe I'm too young. Well, maybe if I was born in a different part of the world, maybe my education's not good enough. I'm not really good at sales. I don't really like being an entrepreneur. I'm just too busy right now. It's too far. All the fucking reasons, all the stories that we tell ourselves as human beings that become our narrative, meaning our story, that we use to make sense of the world, to say why, yes, maybe I don't have the things I want. Maybe my life kind of does suck, empirically speaking, but it's still okay because there's a reason why. Your story is your reason why. But guess what? 99.9% of the time, and it's not because you're flawed, and it's not because you're stupid, and it's not because there's something wrong with you, it's because you're human. And as humans, this is what we all do, even me. We have this inner wiring in our internal mechanism here of how we go through life. It's a self-protective feature we have to rationalize, to tell ourselves a story, to try to make sense of why the things that aren't right in our life, well, we're still okay. It shouldn't hurt that bad. And we go into denial. See, the denial that we go into is a result of, shit, if I don't do that, I'm not going to be able to live because I'm worried. I feel terrible. See, denial allows you to then move through life and say, well, at least I'm okay because it's really beyond my control. It's not my fault. It's just life. And in fact, it's not even that bad because I don't really like money that much. I don't need it. And then you start telling yourselves things like that when it comes to money, like, well, maybe I don't really need money. I could just live on love alone. Really? Really? When I hear someone say that, I don't really need a lot of money. I could live on love alone. I go, how long you been broke for? It's like, they're broke. It's like, how do I know? Well, here's the deal. If you say, I don't need money, guess what? There's no way you will ever have any. You know why I don't have a motorcycle right now? I don't want one. That's why if I wanted one, I'd have one. What am I driving at here? Let me give you another metaphor that will perfectly drive this point home. If you're in a relationship right now with a man or woman and you want to get out of it, say you're married right now, but you hate your wife or you hate your husband, right? And you want them to leave, I will give you a surefire strategy that will get rid of your partner in less than 2 weeks. You ready? Here's what you do. Every single morning and then every single night, right before you go to bed at night, and then right when you wake up, I want you to look at that person that you live with and say, I don't really need you. I don't really want you. And watch how long they stick around. If you don't need money and you don't want, that's your narrative and you keep saying that, money will avoid you like the plague. It will leave you. It will flee from you. There is this universal truth out there. We don't get the things we don't possess things that are not important to us and that we don't want. So don't go around saying those things. It's not important. Bullshit. Money is the single most important thing in the world, bar none, for 3 things: food, shelter, medical care. Like, I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all for everything, but let me just tell you something. If you don't have money, good luck trying to live an empowered life. There's a certain amount of money that you need just for the basics alone. And there's also a certain amount you need to enjoy things. Money is required. I'm not saying that money is the be-all, end-all. And I've said this many times, all right? I probably said in my own podcast, it's a mantra. I said, listen, I've been rich and I've been so freaking happy. I've been rich, and I've been really, really miserable too, because there were things going on that made me miserable. I've been poor, and I've been utterly, terribly miserable. But never once, not a single time in my life, have I been poor and happy. I can't be poor and happy. So I'm not saying that money buys happiness, but a lack of money is a passport to fucking misery. And the sooner that you realize that, the sooner you come to terms with the fact that you do need to learn how to make a certain amount of money, the quicker, the more rapidly your life will start to be one that's marked by having more money. As soon as you make this a priority in your life, say, you know what? Yes, I'm not saying I'm the most money-driven person in the world, but I got to make some money. I don't talk to my brother, by the way. My brother and we never talk, okay? Because him, for a reason I'm not going to rub salt in the wounds of my family. So I was going to actually do the whole rendition there, but let me just drop that why we don't talk. We don't talk, but you know what? Let me just tell you the story of my brother. My brother is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. He is. My brother is flat out brilliant, okay? My brother is an attorney and one of the most well-respected and probably the top attorney in the country in healthcare when it comes to healthcare law, right? He's brilliant, hardworking, and he's one of the top partners at one of the most prestigious law firms in America, Manny Phelps. My brother's a big shooter in the healthcare industry, right? Guess what? My brother was a socialist. He actually was a socialist. Now you know how we don't get along, right? He was a socialist, and he even went away to some socialist camp and emigrated out of the country, the whole 9 yards. And when he went to law school, and you know what he did? He became the lowest paid lawyer in the world, doing public interest law, working for a place I think it was called NYPIRG. Maybe that was before he went to law school. But he went to law school, never wanted to make money, so he didn't. Until one day he met a woman, and the woman wanted money. Why not, right? And she wanted to have children. And those children needed a nice place to live. Now, I bought my brother a house, by the way, but that wasn't enough. He had to keep it up. He had to send them to private schools. He had to send them to colleges, put clothes. All of a sudden, money became a priority to my brother. So guess what? He started making a lot of it, an awful lot of it. Now, my guess is, I don't know for sure, he's probably not even nearly as high paid as he could be, because that's not his nature. He wouldn't even structure his life to be that way. But the point is that he has a lot of money now. He's very successful because it became a priority in his life. He was no different before that. But he chose to do things. He chose a path that did not allow him or put him in a position to make money. We don't have the things that are not important to us. We don't possess them. We'll never get them. So if you're walking around with a bullshit narrative in your life right now, like, I don't really need a lot of money, money's not important, money's the root of all evil, if I become rich, I'll get greedy. Bullshit. Rich people are no more greedy than poor people. Money doesn't change who you are. Money makes you more of what you are. It's like alcohol. If you're an asshole, it makes you a gigantic asshole. But if you're a nice person, money makes you the greatest guy in town. It makes you generous. You're the guy that gives to the hospital. You can save the fucking spotted owl, like I said in the movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. Listen, you ever see a guy who's a total asshole get drunk in a bar? He's the biggest asshole you've ever met. Ever, right? But how about a wonderful, gregarious, nice guy who has a few drinks? Nicest guy in town. Alcohol expands you. It magnifies you. In vino veritas, the truth comes out, right? Well, guess what? In el dinero, there's veritas too. With money, who you really are, because it amplifies you. It allows you to essentially project your power out to the periphery of where you touch. Money amplifies you. So if you're a good person, you're not going to become a bad person. If you're a generous person, you're not going to become a greedy person. No. You'll have power to act on the things that are important to you, to support the causes, to protect the people, and to essentially do all the things that you love and that matter in life. Money is a wonderful, beautiful thing. So my mantra for a very long time is make as much as you possibly can and spread the wealth around. Similar. It's like oxygen, and you go up in a plane, right? And you get that stupid thing, oh, take the seatbelt now, as if you don't know what a fucking seatbelt does. And make sure you put it out. Like, they take this thing, oh, really? I haven't seen a freaking seatbelt, right? So it's a no, we tune out, right? So when they give us the whole seatbelt and safety, we're like, oh, shit, here we go again, stupidity, right? So nowadays, they're starting to make it more interesting. They'll have celebrities do it. They'll have funny people, make a joke out of the whole thing. And there's one company, I think it's Southwest Airlines, they give them the right to really make it humorous because it's so stupid at this point, right? But there's one part of this safety warning about what happens when you're in a plane if things start to go bad on you. There's one thing that has ultimate profoundness attached to it. You know what it is? It's when they talk about the oxygen masks. You know what they say? They say, if you're traveling with a child or someone that can't take care of themselves, and for some, God forbid reason, right, those oxygen masks, they come out. What do they say? They say, put your own mask on first before you help even your own child. Why? Because if you don't have oxygen, if you can't breathe, if you can't help yourself, if you're not functioning, you can't help anyone else around you. In that regard, money is very much like oxygen. Without having money, you could have all the greatest intentions in the world. My daughter's getting married right now. Oh my God, so much do I want to be able to throw her a wonderful wedding. I want to be able to make sure she can get the right dress, have the right flowers, the right band, the right reception hall. I want it to be just this amazing thing, a memory of a lifetime. I want it so badly. And I can give it to her. You know why? Because I work my ass off to make money to provide for the people I love and care about, to provide for them, to protect them, to make sure they have opportunities in life. I don't want to give them too much to disempower them, but I want to give them enough to have the things they need to go out and make their own fortunes, their own way in life, and certainly to enjoy the most special day of any woman's life, which I mean, I think for women is men too, but I think women more, is to get married. I mean, this is going to make, she's having so much joy in just planning it out that it gives me this incredibly warm feeling inside to know that because of my hard work, I can give my daughter this wonderful memory. That's money. Now, does that mean you steal money? No. Did I make mistakes in the past? Yeah. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about ethically making a ton of money. And that means lifting up the people around you, not stepping on them to make money, by delivering massive value to people, to a lot of people, to help people and get paid in return. Bottom line, money is not anything when it comes to the root of all evil. It is the root of greatness, money. Money allows you to expand yourself, to project the power that you have to far out to the periphery of what you can touch and to be effective in life. Before I bring on my guest, we're going to talk a lot about money and life and society. He's a brilliant, wow, I was really surprised with this guest because he was very, very smart. Big surprise to me. And not that I didn't think he was smart. He was just very, very smart. Like, I thought he was just, okay, average person. Really, really insightful, a lot of stuff. I want to just close out a little bit and finish what I was telling you about the story of my mother and the applesauce. So I'm 2 years old. I'm sitting in the high chair. My mom is spoon-feeding me applesauce, and she's saying the only noble way to be wealthy is you got to be a doctor. A doctor. Wealthy, doctor. Nobility, doctor. So when I was 20 years old, graduating from college, if you'd have asked me what I wanted to do for a living, you know what I would say? I want to be rich for a living. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Do you at a young age? Did you when you were my age? Did you really know? Some of you did, probably not many of you. Most of you didn't. Only a tiny fraction. I didn't know. So I'm like, well, I want to be rich. If I go to medical school, that's going to be a disaster. That's 8 more years of schooling. And I just want to be rich now. I'll kill myself. So I said, well, I can't be a doctor, just too much more schooling. I said, but maybe I'll be a dentist. My uncle was a dentist. He made a lot of money. And also, dentist is still Dr. Belfort. My mother will be happy. I'll be rich. life would be perfect. So I applied. I got into dental school. And my first day of dental school, and I was at Baltimore College of Dental Surgery, and the dean, some, white-haired guy, white jacket, very dental looking, right? And he gets up on the podium. There's 110 kids in the audience, and I'm looking around, sizing up the competition. Everyone seems pretty bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm like, all right, so far so good. This looks really good. And the dean gets up and he goes, I want to welcome you all to the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery. You should be very proud to be here. Dentistry is a wonderful profession. So just give yourself a round of applause. Bravo to you. And everyone's like, yay for us. Yeah, we're so great, right? Yay. And he goes, but let me say this. The golden age of dentistry is over. If you're here to make money, you're probably in the wrong place. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm in the wrong place. I got up and I left and I dropped out. And just like that, I dropped out. Think about that. I ended up in a place that I had no business being at simply because of the things that my mother whispered in my ear when I was 2, 3 years old and straight on through. That was the narrative in my family. Get a good education, go to college, go to medical school, become a doctor or whatever it might be. And those beliefs that get inserted in us, we see things, we get told things, we experience things, and those things serve as the roots, the seeds of these beliefs that we have about life. And the power that these beliefs have is that they sit just below the surface of life, disguising themselves as facts of life. We don't think they're beliefs, we think they're facts. And they sit just below the surface, disguising themselves as fact, and they actually affect your perception. They cause you to focus on things that actually support the belief and to veer off focusing on things that go against the belief. So you'll almost like delete out. You won't even look at things. If something questions your narrative, you stop looking at it until someone like me, and I'm not the only one, that will come into your life and say, wait a second, no, you got it wrong. That's not true what you're thinking. Whatever someone told you, that's not the fact of life. It's just a belief. And in this case, it's a very flawed one and a very disempowering one. I'm going to tell you 3 things about money before we go on to my guest. And these 3 things, if you just adopt them into your life, I'm not saying it will change it because you can't change this by knowing 3 things, but it will change your perspective and then allow you to start making a new set of decisions that will lead to massive wealth and success. The first thing I want to say, the first belief, money is easy to make. It's not difficult to make. Money's easy to make. There's massive abundance of money, and it's not hard to make. What do I mean by that? The hardest I've ever worked in my life was when I wasn't making money. See, all of the hard work comes before you start making it. And then once you hit on that right formula, bam, it gets really easy to make boatloads of it. So if you're working really hard and not getting the result, guess what? That's part of the journey. It's supposed to be that way. Now, whether you actually turn the corner and start making it, that's a matter of strategy and other things. But the point is, this is part of the game of money, is that you work really, really hard and you don't get the result. You work really, really hard and still don't get the result. You work even harder and still don't get the result. Then one piece of the puzzle falls, that last piece falls into place, and bam, the money comes pouring in avalanches of abundance. Bottom line, that's number 1. Number 2, that when you're out in the workplace, there's 2 great truths here. Okay, number 1, you will never get rich working for someone else unless you're a salesman on commission. Let me repeat that. You're never going to get rich. You're never going to have a lot of money simply working for yourself, paycheck player, without having the ability to make commission as a salesman. So if you're in sales and you have heavy commissions, that's an exemption. In some cases, in fact, it's even better to work at a company as a salesperson if they have the right type of commission structure, because you basically are in business for yourself. There are many, many industries like that. For instance, real estate. Very often, you're better off just working in a real estate company that has the things in place, the licenses, the profile, and you go in there as a killer salesperson, and you can make massive sums of money and even build your own business within that organization. So you really are in your own business. So if you're a commission-based salesman, yeah, you can make a ton of money. But without that, I got to tell you, all right, it's really, really hard to get rich working for a paycheck. Bottom line. Okay? Two things. And number three, and perhaps, there is only the most important, but let me just tell you one that's just a tough love here. You need to possess certain strategies. There are specific strategies that are going to be industry specific, depending on what you're doing, that are going to be required for you to make a lot of money. You can't just go and do something and not know how to actually do it. There's going to be skills you have to know, things you're going to have to essentially brush up on and then ultimately perfect if you want to succeed. Show me a person that lacks the skills in their industry, and I'll show you a poor person and someone who's failing. Show me someone who really has these skills they need at the highest level, and they have the inner game wrapped up too. The inner game is straight. I'll show you someone succeeding wildly. There are skills you can't ever forget, that there are certain cornerstone skills that you're going to need in life depending on what industry, what business you're in. Now, in almost all industries, you're going to need to learn how to close, how to persuade, how to influence, how to negotiate, how to get your point across. You're almost always going to need that. And if you don't possess that skill, well, you better have someone next to you. Like if you're a Wozniak, you better run into a Jobs. Well, good luck to you. It ain't going to work out, okay? So those three things, just three thoughts, that's the basis for you to start advancing in life. There's so much more to know than that, but I want to stop now. I want to bring my guest on here because he's totally awesome, right? So we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, bam, we are going to take it to the next level in the new Wolf's Den.
I want to be able to look back on my life and say I created a body of work I'm proud of. That was original. That might be a different thing for an artist, but maybe as a business, if you're an innovator or an entrepreneur, what are you doing? You're trying to find where there's a certain amount of creative destruction involved in being an innovator or an entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, if you want to make a lot of money, come up with a better way to do things, so you render another business totally obsolete.
All right, we're back, and as promised, I got an awesome guest on today. Funny as fucking all hell. That I promise you. But also someone that's going to help really dig deeper into this topic here of fulfillment and happiness. Because to me, as I always say, money's the easy part. And there's a lot of people out there who make a lot of money, have a lot of money, but when you cut to the quick, they're miserable. And what's the point of it all if you're miserable every day, right? So, with that, let me introduce my man, Bryan Callen. How are you, buddy?
Good to see you, buddy.
Everything good?
I'm good, yeah.
So, there's just so much we could talk about. I'm sure we'll start to go in different directions. But the one thing that struck me about the things you speak about is this idea that there are a lot of really successful people in the world. But not quite as many fulfilled and happy people in the world, right? Yeah. And I would think that, there would be some relationship between money and happiness in the sense that, watch, here's my belief, and then you take it from there. My belief is that, I've been a rich man, I've been a poor man, and I choose rich every fucking time and never look back. Not that I don't have problems when I'm rich, but money's an amazing problem solver. And look at it this way. I have been rich and been really, really happy. Right. I've been rich and I've been really, really miserable.
Yeah, that's right.
I've been poor and been really, really miserable. But I've never once in my fucking life been poor and happy.
Yeah, I did this joke where, sometimes money will buy you a different kind of sad. Sad in a one-bedroom apartment when you got to take the bus is not the same as sad on a yacht in Ibiza. You know what I'm saying? At least you're dancing to the music. And so there's no question. There's no question that money buys you the freedom. Money will buy you travel differently, you save time, a better view. And I think people who have been poor, Charlie Chaplin in his autobiography talks about this. He goes, there's nothing good about poverty. It's humiliating and it's dirty. And so a lot of what this country is predicated on is the idea that you have the potential to get out of your miserable circumstances. How many people do you know that went from nothing to everything? It's a great American story, and
it's,
have
by
to
the way,
have
it's not only an American story, but it's a predominantly an American story. In the sense that I think that here it's like we aspire to that and respect that, and there are some countries that don't actually, respect. They almost like look down. Like in Australia, you have the tall poppy syndrome, where they almost frown on
Same
people.
thing with Scandinavia and places like that, that's right, where the individual, when you try to aspire out of your fidelity to the group, your fidelity to the state, it's considered sinful.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I've always been far more of a free market capitalist kind of guy. It has nothing to do with my not feeling generous to people who are underprivileged or who need a helping hand. But you better preserve the idea. I think one of the reasons this country is such a powerhouse and continues to be a hotbed of innovation is because you, as an individual, can change the course of your life with an idea and with your risk.
Right.
And that's very important, and that has to be rewarded. You have to keep that going. The question becomes, are you at one point, like you said, your life becomes a number. You can't be trying to get as much money as you can, so at the end of the day your life was a number. It's got to be about something else. What are you contributing? Are you actually growing? Those are the questions. Are you connecting with people? Those are the things that I think human beings really need. And by the way, you might need a little adventure too. I think I think there's something cool about not knowing what's coming next. That's how I define adventure. And I think trying to engineer your life that way is probably the close. And I liked one time you said something about money's easy, but fulfillment's difficult. That's very important. It's very important.
I think, it's interesting. For me, money it's a formula. It's a very simple formula that there are certain skill sets that you need to possess.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm barring being born into the lucky sperm club.
Yeah.
Right? Or hitting the lottery. But for the most part, success is, to me, based on, possessing certain skills, taking risks, and hard work. And if you lack those skills, it becomes very difficult to make money. So money is like a problem almost to be solved.
Yeah.
It's not the end point.
Yeah,
it's
but then you got another problem.
Right? And it's a problem to be solved. Then once you have the money, you can move on to sort of these higher level functions. Not to say you can't do it at the same time as you're making money. You can't pursue happiness as you're making money. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
No, it's a nice byproduct. But my biggest problem has always been I'm terrified of regret. I'm terrified of regret, man. I never wanted to be the guy who said, I should have done this. So that's what drove me. This makes no sense to be an actor. What are you talking about? A comic and a fucking actor? By the way, I was a regular guy. I mean, this joke I have, if I picture Pocket in a crowd, how are you going to describe me? He was 5'11", medium, brown hair, white guy. I blend into a crowd.
Every man and no man.
Yeah, you got to figure out how to separate yourself, which is probably why I became a comic. But the larger problem is that money cannot help me with is I want to be able to look back on my life and say I created a body of work I'm proud of. That was original. That might be a different thing for an artist, but maybe as a business, if you're an innovator or an entrepreneur, what are you doing? You're trying to find where there's a certain amount of creative destruction involved in being an innovator or an entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, if you want to make a lot of money, come up with a better way to do things. So you render another business totally obsolete. Mm-hmm. That's what happened with digital technology. We can go down the line. Mm. And essentially, I mean, there was a debate between a socialist and a capitalist professor. And I can't remember the names of both of them, but they're kind of academic superstars. And the one guy who was taking the socialist point of view said, we should have economic councils that kind of like are involved in engineering some equality in the marketplace. And the pro-capitalist professor said, cool, so you're using your iPhone, I notice, and you've got a navigation system, and you've got a camera, and you've got all those apps. It used to be you had one of those little cameras that you carried with you, and you had a GPS, and all that stuff was separate. And when we put it all into one phone, all those other businesses they became obsolete overnight.
Sure.
Would your council allow for something like that, allow for that kind of creative destruction? The answer is no. It's one of the reasons that whenever you try to whenever you get quote unquote smart people or councils to get involved in the economic system, you better be damn careful.
Well, on some level, I mean, it's one of the advantages that the Chinese have over Americans in the sense that the Chinese government, in the sense that they want to, they need to raise a city to build a dam.
Yeah.
You know what they do? They raise the fucking city and say, you have to this day to get here. It's 18 years of lawsuits and this and that and people crying foul. So it's like almost
But here's their disadvantage. Please explain to me, and I'll wait. Tell me, when was the last time you bought a Chinese computer or a Chinese car? They're not innovators on the level that the United States is. And that's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. You need to be able to go fuck you to any authority figure, including the way things are done, so that you can revolutionize.
I think the reason for that is, and I think, by the way, that I guess the next 10 or 20 years will really, see what's what. But China had a huge gap to close with the United States. So strategically, I think they looked at things, okay, what's the quickest way to close this gap of wealth and, economic affluence? And then we'll just steal your shit.
Yeah,
so why should we be ingenious and invent? We could just steal your shit, exploit the masses of people we have that we can pay, 8 cents an hour to work in factories, and we'll just build your shit cheaper and better than you could. You invent it, we'll fucking steal it, and there you go. And all of a sudden now, they have most of the world's wealth. We have a huge budget deficit, and now Trump is trying to reverse that.
Right.
A problem that has been creeping for many, many years. And by the way, I respect the Chinese for a lot of reasons. One is they never go to war with anybody.
No, they don't need to.
They're not a war.
There's no profit in war anymore.
Right, exactly. And they got that, by the way. And they're not a war. I don't look at them as a threat in any way. They're just very clever and very, they think generationally what we think,
That's
next
true.
quarter,
That's
which is
very
problematic as well,
They
right?
do think generationally. They do have long-term thinking that way, long-term planning.
And I wonder now, well, you bring up a good point because they're not known for ingenuity. And I wonder, though, if that will change now that it's being demanded, like, things like, IP security is part of this new trade agreement. They can't steal our IP so easily. I wonder if the next phase...
I don't think so. I was just there shooting a movie. And one of the things that I noticed is I had to do a retinal scan when I got to the airport and my fingerprints, and I was given a phone to use. There are firewalls. You cannot Google and things. Of course, you find ways around it. But
You were
I was
given a phone to use?
Yes.
Really? What was that? Is that a new thing?
Yep. You use WeChat. China,
I know. It's huge.
China,
WeChat,
by most metrics, is becoming more totalitarian. Totalitarian is the wrong word. It is so top-down command. It's a command economy. I don't think it is getting more liberal. I think it's getting
socially
far more.
They have a social credit score now over there.
That's right.
Which is insane. And then I also saw something. Social credit score means based on how you post, based on what you say, what you do about the government.
Your fidelity.
They give you scores, and based on that, it really dictates how you can move in terms of your freedom, your advancement, your ability to borrow money. It's fucking crazy.
Ask the Uyghurs, that minority, the million or so people, how they're doing under that system.
Probably not so well.
No.
I'll tell you something else I saw that was really scary in China. They did this test of their facial recognition software, and apparently they have, I think, almost the entire capital and the top few cities have so many cameras that they did a test where they had some guy break a law somewhere and they get this go. And within like 8 minutes, they were able to catch the guy just by not knowing who he was, using facial recognition and tracking the guy, like 8 to 10 minutes.
That's right.
And they caught the guy. It was like
one thing that we know from history is that governments can get very good at keeping their populations in line. The other thing we know about that kind of system of government is it leaves pretty much a pile of ashes. It does not leave a better way of life. And in fact, ironically, it doesn't make you more powerful. The reason the United States won these wars, call it World War I, World War II, and all the other, is because even our military technology is part of the free enterprise system. There is innovation in that, deadly innovation, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult to compete with the United States that way. It's why a lot of historians would tell you we won the Cold War with the Soviet Union. They couldn't keep up with us and our technology. Their economy couldn't. They couldn't. People were waiting in bread lines. I went to the Soviet Union in 1985. I saw it with my own eyes.
I think a lot of that has to do with the great saying they had in the Soviet Union in the 80s and 70s. Said, well, we'll keep pretending to work so long as you keep pretending to pay us.
That's right.
In other words, without the
it's a great
profit
joke,
motive and without capitalism, it leads to people just showing up. And I have really first-hand experience. I'll tell you a great story. So in 1993 or 4, I went to Czechoslovakia, which it was just splitting to become the Czech Republic and Slovakia, right? And it had gone from, basically from socialism, communism to chaos capitalism, right? And what was happening was all these companies that had formerly been essentially supported by the state, bloated massively with employees, were now trying to downscale and survive under an actual profit and loss system without subsidies, right? So what the government had done simultaneous with that was they'd issued coupons to all the citizens, and the coupons were essentially almost like a public offering of shares, and everyone got coupons, and it would essentially privatize the economy through coupons. This is nice. So I went there with Danny, the Jonah Hill character for the movie, right? Yeah. So we went there high as kites, armed with lots of money, okay, looking to sleep with a lot of hookers and buy a lot of companies with these coupons.
My kind of guy.
All right, so corner the market and coupons and get laid at the same time.
Yeah, but by the way, some of the most beautiful women on the planet.
I know, and I found the ugliest hooker with a sheepdog's face and shoulders of a linebacker. I ended up with her. Don't ask me why.
Because you're a soldier. You're a soldier.
I was taking one for the team, and I always say I shot a red, white, and blue load in her to prove that we won the Cold War.
Is it fucked up that your stock in my book just went up about 10? That's anyway. But
and yours and many other depraved souls out there.
Thank you, sir. Which
I know you take as a compliment. But
yes,
here's the thing that's interesting, though, is that I went to these companies, and the desperation at these. There was a company called Motorkov in particular, which now is a very successful, large company. They employed, at the time, I believe 200,000 people to do a job that required probably 2,000 people. That's right. And they were in this process of downsizing and trying to cut costs to really, one of the things they would distribute was this piece of shit car called the Skoda that was made as a result of the capitalist, the communist system, socialism, right? And the car was such a piece of shit, like it would rattle and roll as you drove the car. Bottom line is the shit don't work. No. Socialism, it don't fucking work because in the absence of the profit motive, people are not going to work hard. If you can't advance, it's just human fucking nature, okay? But more than that, I believe there's another problem as well. And it's a problem inherent in all bureaucracies and also in central planning committees, is that the group just can't fucking, there's so much blockage in a group. And that's what you started saying. It's like, leave it to 10, 100 people to decide what's fucking best.
That's right.
It just doesn't work.
No.
It's gotta be, for better or worse, there's gotta be a bunch of individuals slashing and fucking burning, and then the ones, but many are gonna be wrong and they go bankrupt, but the ones that are right build massive companies.
That's right. And it was funny, there was a venture capitalist who was talking about, there are a lot of conspiracy theories, right? The rich and famous get together and they control everything. And she tried to get, it was a funny story, she tried to get 5 billionaires together.
To agree on anything.
Just try, she wanted to have dinner with them. And every one of them was like, the one guy was like, fuck that guy, he fucked my ex-wife, that piece of shit. The other guy said, I'm in a lawsuit with that motherfucker. I'm like, and it was just, they all hated each other. She couldn't get 5 of them at a table. Forget trying to control the world, And in that sense, by the way, that is a good thing for all of us. You don't want the richest people in the world to organize that way. You want them fighting. It's kind of how our government works. Anytime anybody who tells you that the government has got these plans and stuff,
in secret rooms.
Bro, any biography you wrote, you listen to the Lyndon Johnson tapes. The dude couldn't keep a secret. He was so frustrated because everybody's fucking each other over. Everybody has their own agenda. State Department, CIA, the DIA. None of them wants to. They all hate each other. And he was like, I'm going to put a one-eyed farmer in charge of my Department of Defense. I don't trust this motherfucker's leaking. He would be begging the editor of the Chicago Sun to not run stories on Vietnam. He goes, please don't do this because I'm trying to get this, and otherwise you're going to blow the secret. It's fucking great. It's like, well, there you go.
It's almost like I dated a girl back. I was actually engaged to her. She was the first and last Miss Soviet Union.
Really?
Oh yeah, she won the contest.
Wow.
She came here in 1989 and 1990. And then the country broke up, so she was the reigning beauty queen. So she still wore
non-existent country.
Yeah, so she, like, in her mind, the problem was, like, 10 years later, she still wore the fucking sash. So she tortured me over that. But anyway, so I met this girl, and the first night we're lying on the beach together in Southampton. We have fire going. I'm looking up at the moon, and I said, yeah, it feels so amazing. It looks so close, you can touch it. It's amazing that we've been there. What do you mean? I'm like, well, we've been, this is great hoax on Mother Russia. She read different history books.
Of course she did.
She thought the Russians invented everything from the TV to the radio to bazooka fucking chewing gum. The Russians invented it, right? And then I mentioned, like, well, you were in World War II? No, this is not. This is Russian. This is Great Russian War. What did you use? 5 people?
Yeah.
Different
I'll
books.
tell you a story.
Right?
The same thing. I'm sorry. Finish the story because I want to.
No, I want to hear you, but I'll tell you after. Tell me your story.
No, but same thing. My mother was with this woman who'd been in the Soviet Union in her life. She was in the United States for the first time, and she kept saying, "Well, we had that because of her pride." And then she walked into the supermarket and saw all the food and started to cry.
Right.
She started to cry.
They were
She'd
read
never seen
different fucking books. So she was convinced. She goes, "This is great hoax. Everyone knows this filmed in a movie studio." So I'm like, her name was Julia, all right? I made the mistake once of calling her Julia. She goes, Julia, that's a dog's name. Do not call me Julia, right? So I said, Julia. I said, you really think this was filmed in the studio? She goes, everyone know this. I'm like, no, don't fucking say no. Everyone know this. I'm like, all right, it's no's, but that's besides the point. Girl never said the word "the" in 3 years. Drove me fucking crazy. The only time she ever said the word "the," I want to go to a restaurant. The one time she said the word "the," she goes, it is beautiful. Let's just go to the Central Park. I'm like, at the wrong time, now you say the fucking word "the." Anyway, so she was hot. She's dead hot as shit. Yeah. Convinced that we never landed on the moon. So I said, Julia, let me put it to you this way. We live in a country. We don't got the fucking KGB here. You can't keep anything a secret. Nothing. If 2 people know, it's not a secret anymore. So just imagine, I said, so just imagine now. Okay, let's just say we do this. We swear like it's 1,000 people to secrecy. The filmers, the people that built the studio, the actors, everyone, the people that built, everyone is sworn to secrecy, and nobody spills the beans. So we take the fucking spaceship, allegedly, but it's not. It's in a studio. We film it, the whole thing, and we fucking get away with it.
Yeah.
We get away with it. So what do? Okay, Mr. Brezhnev, now watch when we do it again. See if we went 3 times, Yulia. We wouldn't go back a second fucking time.
Right.
You brainwash.
And then please explain why the, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 NASA scientists, I guess they were just told to sit in the studio and pretend to work on something.
But like we went back. Like, you wouldn't go back. Let me do the trick again.
You're saying this, but yet they had some poll on how many people in Europe actually believe it was a hoax.
They think it was a hoax.
It's amazing.
Why do you think it is that people tend to always go towards the conspiracy theory?
Because it's more fun.
It's just more fun.
Not only is it more fun, it's also kind of very unsexy to think about how things actually work, how inefficient most things are, how momentum takes place and people go along with it. It's way sexier to think this was planned by a bunch of, people who are very intelligent and secretive. And now we will control the world. It's part of our mythology.
$1 billion.
Yeah, if you made a movie, if you wrote a movie about how the Iraq War probably really happened, which was momentum and businesses were like, I can get
inertia.
more money. It'd be such a tedious movie. You gotta have a villain. You gotta have a hero. You gotta have, the otherwise, and that's, I think, a lot of people who don't read history or who don't pick up a book and get a lot of their information from movies, from YouTube. It's just really easy to curate.
Sure.
It's easy. The algorithm will push you in the direction.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
right?
well, now you just... Okay, so you said what I was just about to say, which is that I think some of it has to do with the way social media works and the way the algorithms are planned out. They keep showing you more and more extreme views of what you like. And before you know it, you end up in a fucking echo chamber with conspiracy theorists saying shit.
But it's even worse than
it's
that.
Slow indoctrination, by the way.
It's not only that. It's the way the news. There's a famous story about 60 Minutes when the editor-in-chief of 60 Minutes came in and said, "Great news, last night we crushed all the ratings." And he said, "Terrible news, last night we crushed all the ratings." Meaning news had become beholden to ratings, which really means they had to have high ratings so they can get more advertising. Now, you have Fox, you have CNBC, you have CNN, these companies. And if you look at the superstars, whether it's
Hannity or
all those guys, him, Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon. If you don't think they're looking at their ratings very closely,
of course
you're
they
crazy.
Are. Of course they are.
And
they're probably breaking it down minute to minute.
Of course
about
they
what
are.
Things.
And you better talk to your viewers. You better in one way or another speak to give your viewers what they want to hear. That is an echo chamber, and it gets more and more purified. And it'd be very difficult so it's not news, these are opinion makers. And I think that
correct that Don Lemon says he's a newscaster, but he's an opinion maker.
No, it's not Walter Cronkite.
Exactly.
Walter Cronkite was just a robot, man.
Right.
And it was as objective as you can get. We could have an argument about, whether or not they were fed certain things. But
but your point is well taken.
You and I came from a generation.
Well
you and I came from a generation where if the New York Times reported it, the Wall Street Journal reported, the Economist reported, Newsweek, Time, we didn't argue about. If I had an argument with you about that, I would go like this. I'd go Time Magazine, I'd show you, oh, fuck, you're right, Brian. Now, if I went Time Magazine, before you'd go, get the fuck, that's a bullshit newspaper.
The liberal fucking
They're fought by this or that, and it becomes this. A lot of these conspiracy theories, by the way, I was trying to explain this to a bunch of young people, they have a lot of their origins in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that were around in the 30s. The Rothschilds, the Jews are controlling the bankers. When you hear globalist, what they're really saying is Soros and the Jews. I don't care what anybody says. This has been going on. This was going on in the 1800s in Russia, dude. This is not new shit. But these ideas get rehashed. If you have a sense of history, you realize that a lot of these conspiracy theories can be very dangerous because what you're doing is trying to find someone to blame.
Well, so there's two things. Number one of the things that you brought up is about why are conspiracy theories more fun, so widespread. And you say, well, they're fun. That's true. I think also they give you an excuse about why you're not getting what you want in life, because essentially a conspiracy theory is tantamount to the deck being stacked against you by unseen players with an unseen outcome, the hidden hand, so to speak, right? Whether that's the Jews, the WASPs, or whoever it is, some untold group of people in power, the Trilateral Commission, whatever the flavor of the fucking month is, right?
That's right. Somebody is keeping me from what I want.
Here's another perspective to that, though. So you brought up a point which is valid, that when we were growing up, if Time Magazine said it, or the New York Times said it, or you heard it from Walter Cronkite, we'd say, here you go. And you'd be like, oh, oops, I didn't know, right?
That's right.
How much of that, though, is true versus the fact that we didn't have an alternative to say, wait a second, there weren't two sides to the story, so we were being brainwashed.
Yes,
I'm not saying it's...
we were being lied to in a lot of ways.
In some ways, as you said, like they were being fed stuff, is that you said that. So I wonder, I think what we could say is that someone like Walter Cronkite made a very careful distinction about not leaning left or right. Right? That doesn't mean to say that the actual narrative that we were being told was indeed accurate.
Yeah, well, we had a very tangible enemy that created
the Red Menace.
There were two things that really kind of focused the American mind and the European mind in many ways too, but especially the American mind. And one was the fact that we had the Soviet Union. That was an existential threat. Mm-hmm. The Soviet Union, you and I grew up with the idea that we could be blown up, that there were ICBM missiles that could actually just kill 20 million, 30 million, 100 million, all of us in a flash. And that has a cohesive effect on sort of the notion of nationality and all that stuff and Americanism. The other thing, though, was Christianity. This is a Christian nation. And you can include the Jews in that because it's part of the Judeo-Christian
sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you drive, I was driving through Wisconsin. I travel a lot, and there's just one church after another. You look out there and you go, this for a long time the Bible was a sacred document. Now, as we get as the internet and as these stories come out, you start to realize a lot of these priests weren't so on the up and up, man.
Right.
all these institutions
and
start
the Boy
to crumble.
Scouts,
That shit is like
very sad. And
it is, but it's also true, isn't it? It also rips the veneer.
It's always been true.
There were certain places that were sacred and pure, and that you could rely on. One of those institutions was the church. Another was the news. These were institutions that were infallible to us. You never argued with a doctor. A second opinion? It's your doctor, bro. That's a new thing. There were were certain things that we kind of held in much higher regard because we were just more naive. We were trusting.
I think when you think it through, you're right. And when you think it through, though, you can't have institutions made up of fallible people that are infallible institutions.
Terrifying, because now you got to rely on your fucking self.
It's almost like it's almost like you put 100 flawed people together.
Yeah.
What are they? One giant flawed institution.
Well, dude, how about the fact that so much of our heroes, like you'd watch a guy shredded, like a Schwarzenegger, whoever it was, like, dude, I got to start getting in the gym and working out. And for me, I'd be working out. I was like, nothing's fucking growing. I'm trying to. Why am I not like that? And my buddy, I had to do a movie, and Todd Phillips, who did Joker, and for Due Date,
I love him, by
he's
I think
best.
he's brilliant.
That's my boy. And Todd said, look, I want you to do Due Date. It was right after The Hangover, and he said, but you need to put on muscle. He ended up giving the part to Danny McBride, but he said, put on some muscle. So I go to my trainer and I go, dude, I got to put on like 20 pounds of muscle. And he's a bodybuilder, and he looks at me as a strong man. And he goes like this. He goes, "You do?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "And how long do you have?" And I go, "I got about 3 months, maybe a little less." He goes, "Really? And how do you propose to do that?" I go, "I don't know. I'll just eat more, lift more." And he goes, "You do that?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Hey, bro, you're a coat hanger. If you want me to change your endocrine system, that's the only fucking way." And it was such a wake up call. He goes, "You're never doing that unless I shoot you full of fucking Deca, etc." And then he pointed out to the actors and all this stuff, and I was like, these motherfuckers, a lot of these guys. And now as I get older, and I know a lot of these guys, I'm like, oh, you're.
I did that.
You did?
In college.
Okay.
Do you know that we could bench press 400 pounds?
Get out of here.
And squat close to 600 pounds.
What?
And anyone who knows me from when I was a kid knows it's true. I was taking Decadurabolin, Winstrol V, Testosterone. I took fucking everything.
Shit. How much do you weigh?
Almost 200 pounds.
Wow.
I got sober. It was 1 year where my parents were fucking scared. They're like, "What is going on?"
You're an extremist,
and
aren't
I
you?
thought
you're like my buddy. You're like I have some friends that you're
I thought
just,
that it looked great,
Yeah.
and then I
Oh,
had
I
to
did.
spend years slimming down, and it took me years of running and light lifting.
you put on muscle pretty easily.
I very easily,
Yeah.
and I think I still have that left over. Like nowadays, I get into shape really, really fast. I build muscle, but it was just I could squat. I mean, like it's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
And you're right. It's just I think that all the things that we thought, not that were true, but the things we took for granted, let's just say, as just that's the way it is, really turned out to be really not quite the way it was.
I
you
know. You're like, I thought I could just eat my Wheaties and
Question: what do you think about the impact that social media is having on society? I don't mean from the perspective of people with likes and shit. I'm talking about there's this massive division. You're about my age. I have never seen the country this divided. Now we both missed the early 60s when I think it was probably somewhat similar with the hippie generation. Even like when I watched the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last night again, right? And that thing, he's like fucking hippies, like where you had that incredible divide right now. But the thing, the divide is different right now. It's not about it's like, in other words, it's not hippie, which was kind of young versus older. It's like people of the same ages having this belief system.
I don't worry so much about it.
You don't. Tell me why.
I'll tell you why. There's a fundamental difference, and it's very unique to this time in history. There may be, you read a lot about inequality, but there's a caveat to that. There is an equality of consumption. And what I mean by that is that everybody has a cell phone and a flat screen TV, and usually a car or some mode of transportation that works, and even more importantly, access to carbohydrates, protein, and fat. It sounds silly, but most people don't go hungry. The 70s, half the world. In the 70s, most of India was starving. China had suffered terrible famines. The Soviet Union was chronically malnourished, and you waited in line for bread. Those kinds of things, thanks to technology and distribution systems, are no longer a fucking reality. The only place you hear about maybe starvation would be Mali in Africa, North Korea. It's just not something we speak about. And that is something that keeps people from being desperate.
The peasants don't revolt when they can have full bellies, basically.
And you can have some dignity. You can stay clean. You have access to a shower. You have access to cheap fabric that you can wear and at least look presentable. These are things that cannot be, that you cannot underestimate how powerful and how important that is. Even healthcare, and a lot of people need healthcare, but for the most part, for the most part, we are living at a time when you can distract yourself from the pitchfork.